From Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, it's Start Here, a podcast sharing the stories of active, aspiring, and accidental entrepreneurs. Today, we kick off Start Here's first ever video podcast with none other than Andy Rossmeissl, founder of VCET portfolio company Faraday, which is a leader in AI-based consumer behavior solutions for direct-to-consumer businesses. Welcome, this is Sam Roach-Gerber.
And Dave Bradbury.
Recording remotely from Vermont, USA. Today's episode is brought to you by the Small Business Development Center. Welcome. Hello, Andy Rossmeissl in the house.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, Andy. So psyched to have you as our guinea pig for this first ever video podcast. As I was saying, Dave and I are like, who can we test something out on here? And of course, you were first choice.
Well, and I got a chance to show off my new bandana. So there you go.
I had some trepidation this morning as to what sort of version of demonic hairstyle Andy might show up with. And I think you're rolling with sort of the very cool data scientist look. So
yes.
Loving
there we go. I like
Loving
that. Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Cool data scientist meets like 70s pilot, which is like the sweet spot, you know?
Yeah,
I'm
the
really
headset,
into it.
the headset isn't doing me a whole lot of good here, but you know.
Yeah, right.
We love it.
How big are your ears? I think we're going to have to get a view of that. So anyway, Sam, let's jump into this. This is fun.
Yeah. Well, let's start off. We'll start you with a low ball here, a nice, easy, soft pitch here. What is Faraday?
Faraday is prediction infrastructure for the consumer economy. So, you know, prediction is the new way of doing business, and it's hard. And Faraday spent 8.5 years perfecting how to predict consumer behavior, not only accurately, but also ethically. And it involves a lot of data and methodologies and integrations and a huge amount of highly scaled technology. And we've wrapped it all up into a nice package, and we're helping hundreds of brands now make trillions of predictions and get better and grow faster.
Awesome. And how long have you been at it?
We started in the fall of 2012, probably 2 weeks until I then called Dave Bradbury asking for money.
You should have asked for help first. Okay.
I knew I was going to get that.
As you know, right, you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you can get money. So we'll just file that one for lessons learned 8.5 years ago. Hey, Andy, could you just sort of define like what machine learning is or AI, whatever like your secret sauce is, just so we have a grounding?
Certainly. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of buzzwords out there. I mean, we've chosen to really move away from AI and machine learning because, you know, I think the well has been poisoned in a lot of ways there with those terms. Prediction is really the thing that matters. What we're trying to do is anticipate future behavior. And, we happen to use, machine learning, which is a form of AI to do that. But ultimately what is important is the prediction, not how we made the prediction. In terms of AI, it means artificial intelligence. It's just computers doing a, pretty poor job of trying to mimic the human brain. It's getting better and better, but it's still, as somebody who works with this every day, it's astounding how simplistic we do have to operate compared to, the ridiculous kinds of processing that our three brains are doing right now, mostly yours, Sam, but, it's a pale shadow, but it actually does an amazing job because we can just throw a whole bunch of computers at it all at the same time, and start to find patterns that even our amazing brains couldn't really latch onto.
Can you just do you create your own data sets, or do you purchase what's the alchemy involved here in your algorithms or your methodology? Because that appears to be the secret sauce. And without giving away trade secrets, like just for the newbie here, what's it look like?
I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, because we're very, open book company here. The fundamental ingredients you need to do the forms of machine learning that we at Faraday pursue, you really need two kinds of data fundamentally. You need historical indications of some kind of event. So somebody bought something and became a customer, somebody returned something, or a lead converted, some kind of thing that has happened a number of times that we're trying to anticipate happening again. At the same time, you need some kind of associated characteristic data about all these people doing these things so we can start to try to find correlated patterns. It's fairly easy to get the historical event data because the brands that we work with keep very good records. If they're using Shopify to sell things, then Shopify has all that data. If they're a credit union with their own member management system, then they have their own records of people opening accounts and closing accounts. The much harder thing to do is to find out a nice, consistent set of consumer profile data about all of these people. I think one of the things I'm proudest about with Faraday is that, 8.5 years ago when we started, my co-founders, Seamus and Robbie, and I sat in a little room down in Middlebury, Vermont, and asked ourselves how we wanted to do that. And, 999 out of 1,000 tech startups at the time in 2012 would have said, well, let's just scrape it off the web, right? I mean, that's cheap, it's free, it generates a quote unquote proprietary asset, which the VCs will love. But, we kind of, even back then, before folks were really talking about, how invasive that was, we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, I wouldn't want somebody scraping my Facebook profile or like what I'm clicking on or anything like that. And so we said, we're just not going to do that. And we never have, and we never will here. It took a little more expense. It means we have to license our data, but it means we're working with really amazing companies like Epsilon that go through an enormous amount of trouble to obtain consumer permission for all of this data, all of which really comes from commercial transaction data, which has always been something that humans have felt is part of the kind of the public discourse as opposed to private conversations. And the other thing that Epsilon does that you really can't overlook these days is they handle opt-out, right? It seems simple, but if some other startup scrapes your data, you don't know that they did, right? So if you want to tell them that you want to opt out from their system, you don't even know who they are. We made an odd choice at the time, but I'm really happy we did, and we feel much better about our business every day because of that.
And I'm sure it's, helped in the last few years. That was one of the things I was going to ask you about, so you kind of already nailed it. But ethics and consumer data are such a huge topic right now. And I think you had some foresight there, but you didn't know how big of a deal maybe it was going to be. So can you talk a little bit about how you've approached that conversation, publicly, facing customers and other folks? There is sort of that stigma around consumer data, and how do you get beyond that and build that trust, I guess?
Yeah, it is really in the news these days for brands who are faced with this sort of battle between Facebook and Apple, very public battle. But that battle is it's just the part that you see of an ongoing war between all of these major technology players and their own kind of dwindling proprietary hold over their users' private data. It's a fascinating topic. The other conversation that we had back in 2012 in the Marble Works office was, are we going to do cookies? Same kind of conversation I had with Robbie and Seamus. We were like, cookies are really creepy. The more, I've been a technologist my whole life, and I remember when they came out with cookies, and I mean, it was, it was super useful, but nobody ever thought that they would mutate and metastasize into this, shadow economy, tracking every single thing we do. And it's just a complete perversion of the technology, but almost an inevitable one. And, we just said to ourselves, we're just not going to do it. We're not going to do cookies. We're not going to do device IDs. We're going to use the identifiers that we all put on the outside of our house or on our mailbox or in the phone book. These are things that we feel comfortable sharing. It ways that, things we feel comfortable, giving to other people to communicate with us. And so, again, an odd choice for a tech company in 2012, but we did somehow stumble into, getting ahead of a lot of this conversation right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you look back on, you're like, phew.
Dodged a bullet.
Well, yeah, totally. Well, one of the things that I find most fascinating about Faraday is just your customers. So if you could talk a little bit about who they are and like any surprises, like thinking back in 2012 and who you thought and wanted your customers to be, is there anything like, ooh, we didn't know about that? And it's, kind of a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I mean, this is the, one of the things that you might not know about Faraday is that when we started in 2012, Robbie and Seamus and I had just come from many years at my first startup, which is in the sustainability space, Brighter Planet, also started in Vermont, also with a ton of help from VCET. And, we were trying to pursue the same goal, which is essentially to accelerate clean energy economy adoption, but through a different angle. And we decided we wanted to just help solar companies. And for the first several years of Faraday's existence, that's pretty much all we did. We were working with 9 of the top 10 solar companies. We were funded with $1 million grant from the Department of Energy. Every single day we'd come into the office, we'd be looking at different utility service territories, and trying to identify through combinations of obvious financial factors, but also less obvious, psychographic factors and other things, which of the, 150 million homes out there in the country would be likely to throw some panels on the roof. At the time was a very needle in the haystack business. And as big as people think solar is right now, it really is still a very small industry, and penetration is very low in most places. So it was an amazing way to start because, we were naive enough to think that would be a big enough market forever for us, which allowed us to really focus and learn, things obviously like the way the industry works, but honestly trivial things that you might think don't matter, like just special terms that are used by solar installers, kind of slang. Every industry has got its lingo, and it's amazing how much more quickly you can get through a sales process if you just use the right word to describe a certain thing. It just, validates, your reputation. We quickly then, maybe it was 2015 or so, started to diversify beyond solar, but, we still work in the solar industry. It's still our passion, and we're very glad that's how we got our start.
And today, most of the customers are in the direct to consumer. I mean, that was a whole emergence that came along, right? Where you could sell razor blades or couches or things that traditionally was in a physical store went direct to consumer. So did you see that coming, that trend, or were you just, in the right place at the right time with the right sort of approach?
I don't necessarily see a lot coming for a prediction company. It's, I guess that's kind of ironic. But no, I don't think so. I mean, our first direct-to-consumer company that we worked with was Burrow. It's still a great client of ours. They make couches that you can send through the mail and put together and move around, and they look gorgeous and are very reasonably priced. And that was honestly just because Rachel Boyle, one of our very first hires, an SDR at Faraday, who's now an all-star account manager for us, just liked Burrow and just sent him an email. This This was back in 2015 when we had 3 SDRs who were literally throwing up everything up against the wall that they could to see what would stick. We do a lot of work in D2C. Primarily Faraday works in 3 different categories: consumer goods, which initially was a lot of D2C, but it's amazing how older brands who weren't necessarily digitally native are wanting that just as much these days. So we work with a lot of them. And then the second category, that has been just really promising for us, and a full third of our business these days is in financial services and insurance, and that's everything from fintech, kind of new forms of lending, and also big old insurance companies. And then credit unions, a lot of them sort of halfway in between. And then the final category is home services, which is where the solar, work is, but we also do a lot of work in real estate tech, smart home security, things like that. So 3 different groups at Faraday, all came originally from solar, and then just kind of seeing what worked and who resonated with our message. And Rob Trail, our COO, was able to come in 2016 and really start building some structure around a lot of the chaos we had produced.
That's awesome. I think that that focus that you're able to have by starting in solar, like that. I know you mentioned that, but that is just so true. Like getting that messaging down, really understanding your customer, and then being able to repeat that in other industries. But I think one of the mistakes we see especially with companies like yours that have this brilliant technology is they're like, anyone could use this, and they that kind of gets stuck in their head. And then it's drinking from a fire hose to try to get customers. And so I think that, that narrow start may have been one of the, the greatest ways that Faraday could have gotten started. Yeah.
I mean, again, it wasn't a genius plan of ours. It was just, not having the mental capacity to really think bigger. The technology doesn't care, right? The technology doesn't know what it's predicting, semantically. So it's very tempting, I would say, to somebody smarter than us, to just go big right from the beginning. But the technology is the easy part, it's like, I'll tell you something we did early on. We would go to these solar industry trade shows every year, religiously for the first, 4 or 5 years of Faraday. And I forget who had this kind of stupid idea to wear lab coats. So, we were data scientists, and so we were going to wear lab coats. And it was this dumb gimmick, but, the first year people were like, who are these lab coat guys? But then the second year, everybody was like, oh, it's the lab coat guys. And, because of that, we can go, we still have the lab coats sitting around. We go to a solar, event, throw the lab coats on, and everybody
got street cred.
Yeah.
Andy, do you think if you had combined the red bandana with the lab coat then, that your success would have accelerated by 3 or 4 years?
The $1 billion bandana.
That seems to be the killer combo right there. So, hey, you mentioned Robbie and Seamus. Oh, sorry. You mentioned Robbie and Seamus as co-founders. Do you think, what's the advantage of having co-founders? Were you just stuck with them from the prior company, or was there was some intentionality around wanting the benefit of a team?
Oh God, I don't know what I would do without my co-founders. Rob, I actually know this. It's a very recent anxiety because Robbie, congratulations to his family, just had another baby. And Lee, who we've just welcomed to Vermont, another new Vermonter. He took some time off to be a good dad, and whew, that is hard. It's like 3 legs of a stool, and then all of a sudden you're getting a really good core workout balancing on 2 for a while. So, it's you only read about the glamorous kind of Elon Musk sort of high flying seat of your pants cowboy kind of stuff in the startup world, but it's mostly, I mean, there's just a lot of dark times. You know, you running out of money, or you lose a big client or something, and you know, there's practical reasons to have co-founders. You know, Seamus is the technology genius. Robbie could sell anything to anybody, and so we're very complementary. But what it really is just like when things are tough, you know, you've got some really good friends that you can get through it with.
Yeah. Dave, you okay? The timing's tough there. I'm going out on maternity leave at the end of June, Andy. So if you could just tread lightly on that subject.
I am effing panicked. Yeah. So
we actually just announced our parental leave policy yesterday. We never had one at Faraday, but we've got 12 weeks for the primary caregiver or birth mother. So very proud of that. Got some great inspiration from Sasha at Mamava and a couple of other Vermont businesses, and very proud to be able to support our employees that way.
That's awesome, Andy. We love to hear that. And then, so that, I mean, I think that your sort of founder trio speaks to this, but like your team is still growing very quickly. Tell us about hiring at Faraday. You guys have gotten some all-stars. So what's your sort of secret there? Oh yeah. Our secret weapon on the technology side is Seamus. He has this way of kind of discovering talent in Vermont, and he sends people emails that are just very straightforward. They're like, let me just tell you about some wild sort of dilemmas I've had to confront on the tech side over the last week, and here are all the different tools we brought in to solve it. And these emails have unbelievable response and conversion rates. Then on the rest of the teams, it's just being out there, coordinating with all the amazing schools we have in the Burlington area and elsewhere in Vermont. Just trying to have a good culture. And, we're not a big company. There's 55, 56 of us, maybe 57 as of yesterday. And, but it's a small state, and I think our reputation is important. Hiring until recently was quite chaotic. We, didn't really know what we were doing, but we just hired this fantastic woman, Bailey Burns, to run HR for us. And HR is one of those things that until you have somebody in the seat, you never really realized how behind you were. It's hiring, as I consider it, sort of the most important thing I do every day. We're supposed to hire another 20 people this year, and if you do it right, then you don't even need a bandana. You're going to be $1 billion company either way. If you do it wrong, you're screwed. So the key.
So 57 people today, hiring another 20 for the plan. So that's awesome. At what number of people do you wish you had hired Bailey or brought in the HR specialist, just as a learning for other founders out there?
Yeah, I would say, 20, 25 people, you got to bring in somebody to do hiring. We're very, very blessed to have good retention at Faraday, just because I think we do really cool stuff. We've just got great people. But that's just kind of luck, I think we're kind of coasting a little farther than we should have, having somebody who is seriously thinking about benefits, and if people are having trouble with stuff or they're not getting along with a colleague or something, I think it's easy as founders to just kind of have rose-colored glasses and just remember when it was only 3 people and then 4 people and 5 people, and it's also collegiate. And I had an employee, I was talking with back in January, who was like, Andy, just remember that, not everybody was there at the beginning, and that, you may still feel this collegiate kind of, thing with everybody in the company, but it doesn't mean that everybody in the company feels that with everybody else. They weren't all there. So it's kind of an eye-opening experience, and it coincided with Bailey coming on, and we're just trying to, go through our growing pains here.
Yeah, I mean, I think back organizationally. I mean, you worked out of the VCET courthouse, our office in Middlebury for a bit, and had a small crew, and then probably get up to 11 or so people here at VCET downtown in Burlington for a spell. Then you started sucking up all the conference rooms, and thank God you moved into Pine Street and got your own culture, because that's about the right time. Yeah. When a team needs that. We've seen this time and time again, Sam, right? And it's part of the evolution. Start, scale, share, and then, get your own walls so that you can focus on your own culture, your own sort of pace and cadence. So, gosh darn it, Sam, they grow up. It's amazing.
Yeah. I know. I hate it. I hate that part. I know it's like what we're supposed to do, but it's always hard,
If you really want us all in there screaming and yelling in the rooms, then we can come back. I think at the time.
That one over.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that.
Okay, yeah, circle back. Yeah, great.
Hey, Middlebury College.
Yeah.
You were the founders, a bunch of the team came out of there. So how's that college and all of its entrepreneurial zeal, how's that helped your organization?
It's just a constant wellspring of talent, energy. I mean, what Heather Newworth is doing over there, and just fostering this, panoramic range of entrepreneurship and innovation programs. I think at a lot of schools, there'd be kind of one way they approach innovation. And I think, part of Heather's genius is like recognizing that there's a lot of different kinds of people and they all engage with innovation differently. And you have to support all of them if you want to do your job. And as a result, we get people coming through Middlebury. I mean, every year we were hiring people who just graduated as interns, and then the interns stay. And I just got an email from a professor who runs the new data science program at Middlebury, and they've got if you can believe this, there's a data science club now at Middlebury, and they just reached out saying, we want to do some work for you. The college is amazing. They did such an incredible job with COVID this last year. And I think it's just kind of reflective of the wonderful culture they have there. And we just keep being very lucky that they're in our state.
Yeah, that's awesome, Andy. And I'm glad you still have a lot of folks down in Madison County. We're big fans, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Actually, reporting live from Madison County, aren't you?
Sure thing. Yeah, Waybridge.
Awesome. That you just mentioned COVID, and I think we sort of have to touch there a little bit. How has COVID impacted Faraday?
Yeah, I mean, culturally, it's been hard for the company. Dave was just talking about our kind of beloved office space in the Maltex building on Pine Street. It's an old factory space. It's pretty raw around the edges, but we like that. And we've got Daedalus and Myers and Speeder and Earls and Great Harvest, and there's just this whole kind of kind of community down there. And our employees, I think, have always really appreciated being able to see each other. And I mean, so many friendships have started at our company because we were all working together, and we've had to kind of tear that out pretty abruptly. We still have the office space and people still go in there, but they have to be isolated in different suites. And so, it's been hard. I mean, we've hired so many people over the last, 14 months since we locked down the office, and, they just don't really know each other very well or us, and we do our best, but it would be very hard, I think, to be a new employee at any company right now and try to get onboarded remotely. We're very, very excited to, hopefully the summer after there's a lot of vaccination, get back together. Although I will say that I don't think we'll ever go back to everybody full-time in the office every day. People have actually been really enjoying working from home. So we got to find a balance. For the business itself, COVID, it's incredibly rocky Q2 last year. There wasn't really anything COVID did that directly, rationally impacted our business in our area negatively, but everybody just got super hesitant. Everybody was waiting on, contracts and expenditures and investments. And so there was definitely a kind of a moment of reflection Q2 last year. We luckily had a really good year for growth for the company, and it ended up in a tough year. And it really is basically just because our team came together, fought through adversity. We were able to bonus everybody at the end of the year because they were able to fight through some pretty ambitious stretch goals we had set. The whole team deserves really all the credit for us making it through. And we ended the year in really an incredible place as the company, financially stronger than we've ever been. Amazing, growth, brands, and we're able to really hit a running start here in 2021.
So awesome. I think you've shared a lot of the challenges that many companies have had, and that's, I think some of those things will make us stronger and bring in policies that we never thought would be possible.
Yeah,
which is great. Dave, I think we're getting there.
We are, but I have one quick question though.
Sure.
This is, if you could talk to your younger self, going back a few years as a leader in the company, what lesson have you learned that, oh my God, had you known it 5 or 6 years ago, would have just made things that much easier or less stressful?
That's a good one. I mean, I think the thing that I would tell my younger self would probably just get kind of annoyed at, but nevertheless, I would just say it, which is just like, Andy, just go a little bit faster. We've always cherished good work-life balance at Faraday, and that's important. I'm not suggesting that that's, something we'd want to compromise, but the thing you don't realize in the early days of a startup is the whole time dynamic. The time you take to do anything affects your growth rate, your burn rate, how often you got to fundraise, hiring, and every day you can move a little bit faster, obviously without compromising quality or anything like that. It just pays so many dividends, and it's an investment that you start to really recognize many years down the road. Next time, next startup, faster.
Perfect. Sam, do you have a quick little question for Andy?
I have the big question for Andy.
Well, then jump to it then. Jump to it.
Andy, if you could change one thing in Vermont today, the magic wand, what would it be?
Well, I guess VCET recapitalization is probably, we'll just say that is, number one. But number two, I would say that the state has a I think looming problem with an aging population, and we see this. There's a reverse gravitation away from Vermont for people graduating, and I don't know the solution yet, but I think it starts with a lot of companies like Faraday who are able to attract young people. Young people want to be. It's funny. You talk to people graduating now, and they don't really care about the comp. They don't bring up money. They want to learn new things every day, and it's not every kind of company where you can do that at. So I'm just so excited that companies like Biocognitive and Beta and really interesting companies doing groundbreaking things are starting in the state. I think building is always the way out of most problems, and I think that's the thing the state needs to do. And there's obvious things like transportation, telecommunication that will help all that, but that's just where we got to keep our eyes at, and so that's why recapping VCET has got to be near the top of the list, that's how we got started. We wouldn't have been here without you folks. And I'm just worried that the next 2 dozen companies like us aren't going to have that early advantage.
Yeah.
So important.
We're worried about it too, and we're working hard at it. And I think, with over $2 billion in stimulus and recovery funds going through Vermont, if we're not able to put aside $5 or $10 million to go seed and syndicate capital around first-time founders or early-stage founders, it's a piece of capital infrastructure we're going to regret for a generation. I mean, it's too bad.
We will.
Yeah. But boy, let's end in a high. But the good news is we're trying. We're in the legislature and they're talking about it. So, Andy, thank you so much for finding a clean bandana and pressing it this morning. It does look like the iron was out, Sam. So, and we really appreciate your sharing a little bit of Faraday's story and yours. This has been Start Here. You got it. This has been Start Here with Sam and Dave, a podcast sharing the stories of active, aspiring, and accidental entrepreneurs. This series is supported by the Vermont Technology Council and Consolidated Communications. This particular episode is brought to you by the Vermont Small Business Development Center. The SBDC offers no-cost expert assistance to small business owners and entrepreneurs across Vermont. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, write a review, check out Faraday's career page, and share it. Thanks for listening. Let's go protect our data and let's get back to work.